Hi, folks. This is Bob flying solo again for the Bob and Ramon show. Tonight, I'm delighted to have Ash Wilson join me. Hi, Ash.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hiya. Now, a couple of things first, because you're going to ask me, I know on the video, why am I dressed like Captain Haddock? Well, the answer is because I just had some stuff done to my house, and the new bit is really beautiful and warm, and that's where my wife is. I'm in the front of the house in my office.
Oh man,
I got no fucking heating.
Oh no!
So I look like I'm camping out. So we got the Captain Haddock bit out of the way, right?
I didn't notice actually. I didn't notice. I thought you looked very dashing.
And you're up in Lincolnshire, aren't you?
Yes.
Where it's probably extremely cold.
It's yeah. I mean, luckily my wife's a farmer, so she's got a big truck, so we can get about because the snow's just been completely. I've not seen snow like it in 15 years.
And I mean, you're well into the minuses. We're probably hovering around. I mean, they say tonight's going to be the coldest night of the year and probably the coldest night for several years. But you're well into the minuses up there, aren't you?
We are, yes. I think last night they said with the wind chill it would feel like -18. But it's strange, you know, because I don't know if you find it's the same way you are, but I find it feels colder when it's about 3 degrees but raining and damp.
Right.
I find
Okay.
the damp cold in England very cold, whereas this cold, you put a coat on.
Right. Good.
Right.
Okay. Although it's a bit out of order, I have to ask you because it's a great segue. You did a gig a few years ago near the North Pole, and I'm fascinated by that. Was it on Svalbard?
It was, yes.
Although I hate the cold, I'd love to see that place. It's got to be one of the weirdest places on the planet.
It's very strange, you know. It's an absolute nightmare to get to. It's 4 flights over about 26 hours. So what they do, you're there for 5 days, and we did about 4 shows in that time, and it is jamathon. Svalbard is tiny. There's 2,000 people there, and 500 of them are kids at school. Of the people who are working, doing looking at glaciers and studying polar bears and whatnot. So. We were really lucky. We got a great tour guide who showed us around the place because they actually mine coal there. That's why there's a settlement on Svalbard. It's very pure coal, although there's only one active mine there now. See, I know, you see, we've got a good guide. And but there's about 3 venues. There's a town hall and there's a couple of bars. And it's just it's insane. You all fly to say the last flight, all of you are together, all the musicians. So it's just a plane full of musicians. Everyone's got guitar on and basses on and whatnot. And you arrive, you go to your hotel, and it's dark all the time. So there's literally no daylight other than for like an hour where it's a bit. So yeah, the sun never comes over the horizon.
It just sort of gets a bit dusky, a bit dawny, a bit dusky.
Yeah, that's what you get, that little bit of like vanilla-y kind of looking pinky hue in the sky, the golden hour for an hour, and then it's pitch dark again. But it's amazing because obviously it was about -15 all the time.
Yeah.
But again, it's that dry cold. So because I'm the same as you, man, I can't stand. I've always got tons of layers on. There's no local Svalbardians as such. Everyone's from all over the world. Yeah. So you know, it's luckily for us, everybody spoke English. So
how did you get a gig there? I mean, I don't know anybody else who's played there.
Oh, you'd be surprised actually. I mean, I first found out about it because my brother did it the year before we did with Lawrence Jones. And they have this Dark Season Blues Festival where they book bands from all over the world. It's not just the UK, all over. And so there's about 60 musicians all at the same time at this festival that do gigs, and they do jam sessions as well. So you can end up playing with people that... I did a jam with some guys who didn't even speak English, which is that whole amazing language of music thing. They were Brazilian. My Spanish is pretty bad. Their English was pretty bad. So, but you know, we just started playing, and it was incredible. And wow, just incredible musicians. They were phenomenal, and it was like that all the time. Everything we saw, all the musicians, every act they booked were great, and loads of diversity as well. But I mean, I don't know how we got that show. I mean, it wasn't one of my own gigs. I was working with the singer called Sari Shaw that I've been working with for about 3 years.
I'm very jealous. So I've been listening back because I guess we ought to tell the people who are watching this how we met. So you're sitting next to your left hand as we look at it. You're sitting next to a rather nice amplifier.
Right. Yes. Oh, I'll move my
a 633 Groove King, I think.
It is. Yes.
The one that I haven't got.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So we both independently know Cliff Brown, who makes these wonderful amps.
Yes.
And the first time we met was actually when you were supporting Dan Patalanski.
Dan Patalanski, that's right, yeah.
In London. And I went with a couple of mates, and we got there, fashionably late, halfway through your set. Thought, bollocks, I wish we'd got here in time. This is fantastic. And towards the end of the set, I said to one of them, I recognize that sound.
That's because I'm a very derivative guitarist, Bob.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. I thought this nice sound. So anyway, we sidled up to the stage like good old fanboys do. And there was your amp. Anyway, so there we were. And so I came and introduced myself. And we've kind of caught up on occasion ever since. And I've been sort of brushing up on your album, Broken Machine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I've forgotten how bloody brilliant it is.
No, it's really kind of you.
I mean, there's all sorts of playing. But one thing I noticed going back to it, I was kind of trying to work out who your influences are, because we're a generation apart.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
And yet we all kind of seek the same North Stars. But it's interesting that you say, you've got your Strat with you tonight. Because when I listen to you, I definitely hear a guy who is at his most comfortable on a Strat.
Sure.
You get the bottom end, and you get that great sort of throat and growl and curl around the note and all the stuff that a Strat does.
Sure.
Really. I mean, is that fair, or am I pigeonholing you?
No. Definitely. Like it.
Because you play Les Pauls too.
I do, and I'm between Les Pauls at the moment, actually. But I mean, I'll play. If I had more cash, man, I'd have one of everything. I mean, the infamous gas problem that we're all afflicted with.
Yeah.
I really like Strats. I think because I started out, I said to my dad, "Oh, I've played this guitar, and I think I'd like one." And he was like, "Oh, definitely. Let's buy one of those instead of a PlayStation." So he started force feeding me these VHS tapes of Clapton and Gilmour and actually a Genesis video that's got and Daryl Sturmer's playing Stratocaster on that and Rutherford. So these three live concerts really were kind of like what got me into guitar music, and the common denominator was the Stratocaster.
Yes.
So I wanted a Strat, and I didn't know what it was called, and there's no internet back then. There's guitar magazines and stuff. So I now to my 13-year-old brain, I have no idea what that is, but then just the sound, Fender Stratocaster. My dad comes home and he's like, "Oh, you want a Fender Stratocaster?" And I'm like, "I do. I definitely want a Fender Stratocaster just because of the name." So I ended up with a Squier Strat and maple fretboard, because Gilmour and Clapton were the guys I was, they're the guys I'm into at that time, and then I heard Kenny Wayne Shepherd on the radio. So I'd started learning Apache and a lot of Hank Marvin stuff.
Yeah.
And there's one guitar player in Skegness at the time that I knew of. So, and he was a massive Shadows head. So that was what we learned, because that was all he could teach me. That was what he knew. So which was great, because he got me playing melody really early on.
Yeah.
And he was really patient, really lovely guy. And then I heard Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He just released Trouble Is. So I think it's his second album. And blues, I didn't really know. Clapton to me was, that's blues music, because I didn't really know.
Yeah.
And he had a Sunburst Strat 61, I think. So I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then, I get chatting to my dad, and he's like, oh, one of my favorite albums when I was growing up was the Irish Tour, or Rory Gallagher. I'll buy it. So he bought it on CD, because all these vinyls have been lost years ago. And again, a little bit of Sunburst left on it.
Yeah.
Sunburst Strat, Rosewood board. So I'm like, oh, that's what I need. So I worked. This is an adult show, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can divulge the following information then. I worked in a sex toy shop on Skegness seafront for a
Okay.
didn't do any demonstrating. I sold a lot of large implements to some very uncomfortable looking chaps. During I was only about 15.
I mean, it's gone mass market now. You can buy them anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, and now it's no big at all, is it? It's just completely just wander into, you just saunter into Ann Summers and everyone's in there, this one has got the turbo mode. So I did that and I saved up. And what my parents said was, okay, because I was really I've been playing about a year and a half now, and I was really, and my music teacher at school was really behind me, carrying on and maybe going to music college, because I wasn't particularly interested in school. I did all right, but I didn't do great. But I just wanted to play guitar all the time. So they were like, okay, well, we'll invest in a new guitar, and as I discovered when I got it, I didn't actually need a new guitar. It was a new amp I needed, because I thought, oh well, if I buy a Fender Stratocaster, I'll be able to get those Kenny Wayne Shepherd tones and those Rory Gallagher tones, and that didn't happen. I had a valve state.
That's really interesting. So you learnt another lesson that most guitarists don't learn in a lifetime, and it took me most of my lifetime to learn.
Right, sure.
Which is it's the amp.
The amp, mate. Yeah, I mean, I've often said to students, actually, don't throw tons of money at an instrument. You want something that really stays in tune. You can intonate. And do you want single coils or do you want humbuckers? And really, the amp will do, and especially if you buy, because you can get decent little drive pedals to do impressions of other amps and stuff. You can get great, nowadays you can get a great setup for a few £100 and you get a really great sound.
Absolutely.
So I got my parents matched them, and I got a 62 reissue Strat for about £800 from Coda Music, which weirdly is where I always end up buying my guitars, or Andertons, but for some reason I always end up. In fact, I got this from Coda. Les Pauls and stuff. I was well into like Slash. You said in your message.
I could hear a bit of Slash in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think Slash is probably the last of the great Les Paul players. I think he's amazing.
He's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, and I think what the thing with Slash is he's almost an icon rather than a guitar hero now. I think, isn't he? You only need to see his silhouette with the hats and everything else, and the romance, I suppose, of rock and roll isn't what it was. I don't think. I think our pop stars nowadays are a lot more accessible than they were.
Yeah.
Back when we were, when we were younger, and someone like Slash, who had such a distinctive look, and he plays guitar really low down.
But so there you are, and by now you're probably just playing and all the rest of it. You're getting together with some mates and doing bands and stuff. But when are you then making the transition about shit, this is serious?
Well, I started a band at college, out of college. So all the guys at college wanted to be in Jamiroquai when I was.
Okay.
And case in point, great band, really funky. But I really wanted to play solo.
Yes.
So of course there weren't many solos. There's lots of really great rhythm chops and stuff like that. But for me, it was just like, oh no, I want to play blues. I want to play. I was getting to Peter Green, and my guitar. Well, he wasn't really the guitar tutor. There was the rehearsals tutor at college was a guy called Ray Fennick, who. Oh yes. Just one of the best guitarists in the country, I think.
Yeah.
And Ray was playing all this like Peter Green stuff and Steely Dan, and I know, which obviously it's not blues rock, but there's this really cool guitar playing in it.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be, and I wanted to put something together where I could express myself. And I had a weekend job in a kitchen washing pots. And one of the chefs used to listen to Metallica. Guns N' Roses was about as rocky as it got for me.
Okay.
Like anything sort of beyond that didn't do it for me at the time. So I sort of gingerly approached this chap. He's a bit older than me, and he was a chef, and he really played into the stereotype of angry, hostile, don't come near me, I'm sweating from every pause.
Yeah.
Chef. Well, I knew he played drums. So I was like, I'll ask him. I'll see if he was. And he was like, yeah, I know a guy who plays harmonica. And I was like, what? In Skegness? Amazing. Yes, bring him along. And a friend of mine did some hunting around and found a local bass player, and we went and had a rehearsal, and the harmonica player turned up with a Stratocaster and an amp. And I was like, oh, no.
I'm the guitarist.
I'm the guitar player around here, kind of thing. And Trev Betterson, who I don't think you'll have heard of. He sort of only really plays locally around here, but what a incredible blues musician. Like, really just authenticity absolutely personified in that guy for blues. He plays harp. In that he gets all that great visceral distortion out of it when he plays, and he plays lovely guitar. He's a big Muddy Waters fan and BB King fan, and although he's left-handed, but he plays a right-handed guitar, so he's got a very aggressive vibrato.
Same as me.
Yeah, man, and there's a tension to that vibrato that I really love. And he started playing guitar, and I just like, oh, what on earth? I might as well go, like this guy's just something else. So we really complemented each other well, because I came at it more from a rock angle.
Yeah.
And he came at it more from a blues angle in between us. And it took off really quickly. We had a lot of lineup changes, but Trevor and I remained pretty consistent. And we put an album out. We self-financed a record, and we did okay. We came down to London and we did some shows, and in the end, as young guys do, 3 years later, we're about 20, and we all fell out.
Right.
This big European tour booked, and we all just fell out with each other over egos.
Right.
And money was the big thing.
Yeah.
Actually, we were earning sort of, I think by the end of it, we were on like 700-800 quid a show. And we were playing a lot of shows, so there was plenty of money in there. But this European tour we didn't have any guarantees. So my argument was, well, whatever we get, we should just split 4 ways. And one of the individuals in the group had taken out a mortgage or whatever, and he was like, well, I need more. I need this guarantee. And I kind of limped along for a bit after that, to be honest. I put a band together with my brother. And Greg Smith, who was Lawrence Jones's bass player for a couple of years, and we did all right. We did a bit, but we weren't very bluesy, but we were playing on the blues scene. And I had made friends with a guy called Wayne Proctor in the interim time, a drummer, and who just started producing young bands, and he sort of took us under his wing and got me into songwriting. And before this, I used to just play a song to get to the solo.
Yeah.
And then I just play as much pentatonic as I could over the top of that. And then eventually the singer would sing again, and I'd have to stop. So
that's about where I'm stuck. That's about where I've got to.
that video I saw the other day, I was most impressed with your playing. It was a bit of a wake up call for me. I really wanted to. All of a sudden, it was like, lyrics were important and chord progressions were important. And at the same time as that, I met my wife. So I ended up doing a teaching degree and got into teaching for a couple of years. So taught at a music college for about 5 years, which was amazing actually, because I met on the teaching staff, actually, some of the students were incredible as well. So more incredible musicians who influenced me in different ways and brushed my music theory up.
Which college was it?
It was a local one just at Lincoln,
right?
Called Access to Music. There's tons of them. Sort of, I think they're called Access Creative College now. They've become like a more of a. They've had to branch out into video game programming and stuff. So when I was there, it was just a music college where
got it.
I mean, I started off just doing guitar lessons and ended up sort of holding lessons on, music journalism and all sorts. It was a really amazing learning curve. And I got an opportunity to join a band right when we were planning to get married. So Claire and I have been together for about 10 years. And my brother had played drums for a guy called Sean Webster, who used to be based in the UK, but he's based in the Netherlands now. An amazing singer, like, wow, really great voice. and a good guitarist as well, to be fair to him. It didn't really need me. But they decided they wanted a guitar player, and my brother sort of put my name forward. So for about a year, I gigged in Holland every weekend, and then drove back, and then went to work, and I'd be sort of teaching from 9 on a Monday morning, having got back at about 8:45. It was insane. I did that for a year, and then as we were planning to get married, my wife, who was like the most understanding, amazing person on the planet, because she was a pro hockey player when I met her, so I think she kind of understood that I still had the bug to.
Yeah.
I really want to, I sort of got to like 26. I'd never really done a proper tour longer than a week, and I really wanted to sort of cut my teeth, as it were, playing live, and so she was like, "Oh, why don't you just do the Sean thing?" So I did like 2 years with Sean, and we played all over Europe. So I'd sort of gone from never really playing anywhere further than Lincoln, well, London, I suppose, a couple of times, but not really ever going that far.
And how many gigs are we talking about? A pretty busy schedule.
Yeah, it was a busy schedule at one point. Yeah, I mean, one year we must have done 150, 200 shows or something. We were over in Poland, Austria. I mean, Luxembourg. It was a mad run. But I then got a newbie in my bonnet, in that we were now trying for a family, and I'd not done a solo record. I'd not done an album of my own.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'm not going to have time to stay with Sean and then be a dad. I didn't really know how much becoming a parent was going to affect my free time. So I thought, I've got to lose something. I either don't do the solo record and just keep playing with Sean, or I leave Sean and do my own thing. So I planned to do an album of 12 songs, 12 bars, no material, just go in the studio with a couple of guys and record it there. Try and do it really like a real honest, old school kind of, write the tunes in the studio, just be blues, it'll be great. And I made a bit of a mistake by hiring my brother and Roger Innes.
Oh, he's great bass player. I've played with him with Cliff. Yeah, great bass player.
Well,
the biggest bass pedal board I've ever seen, mind you.
Oh, Roger's bass pedal board is outrageous. So I make this terrible mistake, because as soon as the three of us start playing together, something really magical starts happening. But it's not 12-bar blues. It's something else. It's kind of a pool of everyone's influences are coming in, and I'm having a heart attack. I'm going, oh man, I love what we're doing, but this and Roger's amazing. Roger's got just his manner is very, I find is really soothing, and he was like, oh, don't worry about it. Blues is all about being honest, really, and this is honest music. It's coming from somewhere natural. We're not manufacturing this. We are doing what you want to do, but. And I was really keen to get these influences in, especially of Rog, because Roger's got such a more diverse knowledge of harmony than I've got. So he would go, oh, why don't we try this here? And all of a sudden I'd be like, oh man, yeah. And then we could go, and it became this real collaboration. Yeah. And then Phil got offered the Lawrence Jones gig, which Roger was already doing. So Roger and Phil couldn't turn that down. It was a huge opportunity for him. And Lawrence is out working loads and all over the world. They ended up recording in America and all sorts of amazing stuff. So of course at that point it was going to be Wilson Brothers, and we thought it would be kind of fun to do this Wilson Brothers. So Phil goes. So I'm like, I've got these songs. We've recorded 12 tunes or whatever. So I end up doing the solo thing. Out of necessity, it was like, well, it's got to be my own thing now, because if I don't go out as me. So
you'd recorded the album, and basically you then took it upon yourself to kind of take it out there and promote it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Roger and Phil was so busy with Lawrence that I ended up, I'm very lucky. I've got loads of friends who are really phenomenal musicians, So I think the show you came to, there was a guy called Steve Amadio on bass, who's he's great. Really, really, or it reminds me of Tony Levin, and a guy called Tristan Paul on the drums, who's really got. He's sort of like halfway house between Bonham and Chad Smith, and So yeah, so we did it. We did the Dan Patalanski. So that was the first thing we did. And one of the things I will say to anybody who's looking to put an album out, put money in PR. That was what made the difference for me. My entire the last 4.5 years, where I've been like a pro guitarist or professional guitarist. Pro makes you sound better than I am. But while I've been doing this just for a living, has been as a result of hiring a PR guy, and getting my music heard by people and getting it reviewed and because I had this album and I was really proud of it, and I thought with the mission statement for that record was, let's eventually, once we figured out it wasn't going to be 12-bar blues anymore, was let's just write something we'd listen to.
And here's something that might please you. So I was talking to my band on Zoom a bit earlier, and I told them that I was going to talk to you now. And the drummer and the keyboard player both said, "Are you really talking to Ash Wilson? That album's fantastic."
Oh, wow.
That's my keyboard player and my drummer. That's not even, a would-be guitar hero.
I'm more stunned, Bob, than you are.
Yeah, but it's great. As I say, that's not guitar players. That's fantastic. But that gig where I saw you, the O2 in Islington, Patalanski did something I've never seen done before, which is when he played a very slow blues, which did go on for a very long time, he kept on turning down and turning down and turning down until in front of an audience of 200 plus people, he had his Stratocaster turned off.
Oh, yeah, it was totally off. Yeah.
And the drummer was just keeping time with a very gentle clap. In normal circumstances, especially with a fashionable London audience, they'd all lose interest quickly and they'd all start jabbering at each other and what have you. It was magical.
Yeah. I mean, Dan is... he's got prodigious talent, I think, really. And Dan, his playing is so unique and his sound is so unique. He's one of the things that's really amazing about Danny, actually, is that he's as nice a guy as he is a good guitarist. He's the most warm and welcoming human being you could ever imagine. And I think that comes out, when he's singing, because when his voice is quite hoarse, isn't it? When he sings, he's got this very hoarse kind of Chris Cornell thing going. Yeah. When he plays guitar, he's got this really sweet voice, I think, especially like you see on the slow blues. And he has a very specific, you won't tell me what value it is, but he has a very specific treble bleed in his guitars as he turns down. Because I remember the first sound check we did, which was, I think, was that gig actually. And I think that was the first show of that run of gigs. He had this outrageous fuzz sound, like really, like you say, thick, chewy, fuzz face, Stratocaster. And then he turned down and it was like a hot blade, not a sharp, cold blade, like a warm blade of just brightness that bloomed out of his amplifier. He was using a Dr. Z. And I was like, how's he done that? I didn't know what a treble bleed was. And so we had this discussion about fuzz faces and treble bleeds and the relationship, and it clearly. And
he really rides his volume all the time. And actually his tone as well, a bit.
Yeah, and I think that because he does with the solo, he does it that, like you say, gradually drops. One of the things that I kind of rely on a bit to not repeat myself with a group is to change dynamics, which I think is a trick everybody really uses, but Dan doesn't need that. He's one of those guys who's just tuned in to that frequency. I've maybe tuned in 4 times. He's there every night. He tunes in and it just comes out. That band, that German band he had, they were a band anyway. So you have that sound that of 3 people that play together all the time with Dan Patalanski plonked on top of it. I mean, you really are only as good as your band sometimes, I find. I certainly, and having done tons and tons of gigs with different lineups, it's amazing how different players inspire you in different ways.
So listen, bit of gear for a minute. So you're playing a Strat, and I've slightly unkindly consigned you, as I certainly, when I listen to you, I hear a Strat player, but you don't just play Strats. I mean, I think you were saying to me you've got a PRS Silver Sky.
I do have one of those.
And And
Silver Sky apologist.
well, no need to apologize. But I mean, I think people want him to slip on a banana skin. That's the truth.
Sure.
But he can make some very fine guitars. But you find it suits you.
Well, I tell you what it was. I was definitely when it was announced on the camp of, oh, you're joking, and I ended up trying about 5 over this period of time, and they were all great. I bought one, and I just bought what they had in stock. They had a white one, so I got a white one, and the first gig it did was Svalbard. So I tuned it down a tone, put it in a mono bag, flew to Svalbard, 4 flights, 4 planes, 26 hours, -15 when we land. I get to my hotel room, it's still a tone down, perfectly in tune. There's something to be admired in the way that company engineer guitars. I mean, I get this is definitely like an Excalibur guitar, like the heavens opened and the sun came down, and when I played this. A lot of the Gibsons I've played, 50s Gibsons, have got a real nice sizzle in the top end.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the modern ones don't often have that, and you end up changing things but that does.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this I'm sitting in front of a Zoom background, but let me get it right. Yeah, my finger's on it now. But this thing, that's my 58 Les Paul.
Oh God!
And they just, they're not dark and muddy. They have a lightness to them. These 50s guitars.
Yeah, they do.
A lightness there. Whoever said that? A very old Telecaster and a very old Les Paul have got a lot in common, and they really were speaking the truth. They've got this kind of lightness that means you can play around inside the note without it getting all there's
none of that low mid gunky sound, and this definitely has, it's got quite low output pickups in it, and so nice. Well, I'll run with that for. I mean, unfortunately, I did 2 gigs with it, and then I had to come home.
Well, so that's a great segue, because I was going to ask you, like, what are you up to at the moment when people like me are pretty bloody restless and bored, but for you, it's just taken away most of your living. So you're recording again, aren't you?
Yeah, in fact, we've pretty much done, actually. So we're 9 songs in, and they're done, they're wrapped. So it's the issue we've had is that the other 2 songs that we'd recorded, we had about 20, and we recorded 12 or 11, and 2 of them just don't sit. We've got to wait for the restrictions to be lifted so that we can play, because I'm very much into the rhythm track is the 3 of us, and then overdubs are overdubs, but I don't want to like do the guitar and then do it remotely. I really want it to be done as the rest of the record is, because there's an energy to the album that the first one had, and this has got as well, and it's because we recorded it together. I did what everybody did. I did a few live streams on Facebook. I was very lucky in that my friend Wayne, who started me off writing songs, had some work come in that we could record remotely. So I somehow managed to flukily buy one of those top boxes, because what I was thinking was, and I took it on tour with me. We were trying to figure out how to get the stage levels down. And I thought, well, if I go onto ears, I can have my volume, and because you know what the 633s are like, you can get a great sound out of it with it barely on. I used to use vintage amps, like a lot of people, especially on the blues scene,
deluxes, supers, things like that.
I had a quad reverb, which was actually had 10s in it rather than 12s. It had 2 EV. Those old 80s EVs in it, and it had a pair of greenbacks in it as well. And I had a Marshall JMP 50, and I used to run the 2 together just at the same, not wet or dry, just both the same, just on. I had a gig rig thing that you could flick the phase, so you get all the nice. And then and it had like a ground lift on one output as well. So Humdinger, I recommend that if you ever want to use 2 amps. It's phenomenal. And but it was a nightmare. My back was, that Fender Quad, man, was in brutal. Way more than a 412. It was outrageous. So I want something light, that's reliable, that that, I don't know, he just does. And I had this, you know, everyone at the time was like, oh, 2-Rock's the way to go.
Not the cheapest amps on the planet, are they?
Well, they're not the cheapest amps in the planet, but then these aren't.
No, but I mean, they're substantially more than these, you know.
They are, yeah. You're looking nearly twice the money. I literally went, tried the Groove King, was like, I'll just have one of these.
Yeah.
I'll just have one of those. That'll do. And he's like, well, I can do this. And I was like, you've already built the perfect amp for me, mate. When will it be ready?
So it's funny. It's funny. I've had a Groove King visiting here 2 or 3 times, and I'd really like one.
It's a single channel amp.
Yeah.
You know, so my original thing was I wanted to use less pedals, and that hasn't actually happened because I'm so into Doyle Bramall. I'm a massive Doyle Bramall 2 fan, and his use of fuzz and univibe and delay and reverbs. And actually, you know, as my taste in tone has evolved over the last couple of years, the amps just come along. It's amazing. It's very much like it'll just do what I need to do, and it's a great amp to just plug into. It's a great pedal platform.
Now, while you're on pedals, though, I think you use a Mad Professor.
Do you know what? I'm a little bit lost without that, if I'm being brutally honest.
Right.
I've been ruined by it. The Royal Blue. It's hardly doing anything.
Yeah.
But if I turn my guitar down with the amp sound, it kind of dulls down, right?
Yeah.
There's no treble bleeding here. But with this, you retain all that top end. So for those little, you get you get that spanky strattiness out of it. So it doesn't really do a lot other than it makes my volume control more usable.
Yeah,
across all my guitars, really. And it doesn't color the sound. There's a little bit of bottom end that's lost, but when you're playing a gig anyway, it's lost anyway. The bassist is
and then when you want to kick through and push in a bit more drive, where do you get that from?
So I've got I've followed Jesse Davey around like a bad smell over the years, and when he started building pedals, I got his vintage fuzz. In fact, I got a vintage fuzz, and I got this thing called a tone switch, which I've got in both my Fender Strats, which changes the impedance, I think, of the pickups, in that it's like a virtual long cable. So now, if I kick it in, without it, with it, it barks. It's a bark all of a sudden. So it's a very easy way to kind of get into that Vaughan Albert King territory.
Yeah.
And when you add gain, it straight away, you've got, it does that whole, and there's 4 settings, so you can keep, and it just gets a bit duller but bigger. It doesn't sound anything like a Strat now.
What's really interesting is that with a minimum amount of hand movement, you're getting an enormous number of different sounds out that guitar.
Yeah, it becomes a sort of a Swiss Army knife of for riff. I'm not doing anything on the floor. It's quite a cool little thing to use if you're just using one guitar. It gives you all sorts of tonal palette to play with, really.
They're all great sounds too. There's not a dud in the bag.
I like the out of phase sounds to be very sort of in that Knopfler-y. Obviously, I'm not using fingers, but so I've got the vintage fuzz that he released. That again is very responsive to the guitar controls. So, if you excuse all the noise, there's something in the electrics in this room. You go from big chew fatness to nice.
Cleans up well, though. Cleans up well.
Yeah.
So tell me, as we roll this to an end, tell me a couple of things. First of all, I'll ask you in this order. So who do you listen to now? Because obviously, we've got the same points of reference despite our age difference. From the greats. Sure. But who do you listen to these days? Who do you think is around there and out there and doing great stuff nowadays?
I mean, there's a lot of great guitar players that are like what I sort of say is like Instagram, YouTube famous. That are. I mean, there's a lad, and well, actually, Chris Buck. He's got his band Buck and Evans, hasn't he? And they're great, and they've been doing some amazing stuff. And I think his playing is just wonderful. He sort of takes like. For me, he's kind of got that Texas blues thing going on, but there's a lot of like Derek Trucks in his playing, but he does it without a slide, and he has this great technique where he sort of he plays with his fingers and he tucks his pick behind his finger. And, I think he's wonderful. I mean, I love the way he plays guitar, and Chris King Robinson's another one. He kind of he's sort of in that Jesse Davey, Stevie Ray territory, big guitar sounds, just amazing tone. I think for me, it's the guitarists that have a great sound. That's really where I'm, and have a bit of individuality. I'm a big Queens of the Stone Age fan, you know, and I love Josh Homme's use of gear that's a little bit left of center. You know, it has a very angular sound. It's not a round sound, is it? You know, aggressive. And I find that as I'm getting older, you know, it's becoming less about chops for me and more about creating a soundscape. And you know, which is why it's good that I work for other people, because then I have to work on my chops to make sure everything works. You know, when I'm doing my own stuff, it's, you know, I mean, there's a couple of songs on the new record that they don't have guitar solos on them. You know, they're riffy, but but there's some cool guitar sounds. You only have to open Instagram and write guitar, and there is, you know, there's just reams and reams of incredible guitar players. So there's loads of space for...
Well, and this whole new breed now, at last, I'm going to get shot down when this gets published, but at last, the women.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for a long time, girls sort of stroked guitars rather than hit them. And now they're out. I mean, you know, there's an awful lot of super shreddy and all a bit like, I wonder what that sounds like outside of a bedroom environment kind of thing. But there are some wonderful young female players too.
Yeah,
really
I mean, there's, I mean, I obviously, when I was going out on the blues scene, I came out when Chantel McGregor came out and JST, Joanne came out. So, and they're both two real, I mean, Joanne's a really aggressive guitarist.
Yeah.
She really lays into it when she plays. What's nice is that when I was teaching, it was the same, you know, and you know, when I first started off at the college, it was me and a room full of guys learning guitar, you know, and then as my job progressed, all of a sudden there were more women coming through, girls starting to learn to play the instrument. And
to wrap up, obviously we can't speculate on when we're going to get unlocked, but I guess we're going to get unlocked sooner or later. So what are your kind of, you know, if somebody fired off the starter pistol now,
yes,
and said, "Okay, Ash, you're out," what are your short-term plans? What are you going to? Well, what are you going to do? You're going to finish the album,
get this record finished,
and take it out,
and absolutely take it out. I mean,
brilliant.
You know, it's my main squeeze, obviously, is the Sari Shaw group, and Sari's based in the US, and you know, she's got a pretty good following in the UK. But it's really one, maybe two tours a year. But in the meantime, that then I'm going to try and take the positive out of the negative of that and be like, right, well, okay, let's try and get something going in the UK, you know, get some. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to, you know, employ someone to help me sell the record.
Yeah.
And try and get it in places where, you know, we managed to get it in some guitar magazines,
Good.
The last one, and we managed to get it in some national press. And, you know, like I say, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff if it wasn't really for getting for getting that guy to do that for me. And it's the best money I've ever spent, you know, other than buying a guitar in the first place. And I think this record is better than the last one. In some respects, it's more of a guitar album in that it's more riffy, and it's a collaborative one again, but actually the sort of the genesis of the songs sort of came from this room. So it's Roger and Phil's interpretation of the tunes I sort of sent to them. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking from that point of view, in that I'm like, ooh, well, if the follow-up doesn't match up to the previous one, then
well, Ash, listen, I'm really hopeful that we're all let out of school very soon, and that works for you, and I will absolutely take you up on that beer.
Yes, absolutely.
But for now, thanks ever so much for talking to me.